The sun had just started to set when he walked into the dealership, a calm air about him, yet a fire burning inside. A middle-aged man, dressed in a simple jacket and jeans, walked past the shiny, gleaming cars that lined the showroom. The sleek machines stood like trophies, their polished exteriors reflecting the bright lights overhead. The man didn't seem out of place in the luxury car dealership. But there was something about him that made the staff uneasy, something about his demeanor, as if he wasn't there to browse like the usual customers. He walked up to the front desk, where the manager stood, his eyes immediately scanning the new customer. His face was painted with the kind of arrogance that only comes with someone who believes they have all the power. He wasn't used to people who didn't fall in line with the typical customer base. The manager, a man in his mid-40s, looked down his nose at the visitor, his eyes narrowing. "How can I help you?" the manager asked coldly, his tone dismissive. He didn't expect a serious answer. Maybe the man would ask for a brochure, maybe just look at the cars, before quickly walking out. The manager had dealt with a lot of people who weren't his target customers. They never seemed to buy. But the man didn't leave. He simply asked, "I'm interested in a specific car. Can I take a look at it?" The manager smirked. "Of course. We have many cars here, but let's see if you're interested in something within your budget." His voice was dripping with condescension. The customer didn't flinch at the remark. Instead, he simply nodded and followed the manager through the showroom. The manager led him toward the high-end cars, those that gleamed and sparkled as if they were meant for a different world. "Take a look at our finest," he said, waving his hand toward the luxury vehicles. The man didn't seem impressed by the cars, though. His eyes were focused on something else, something that wasn't obvious to the manager. The manager wasn't used to people not falling for his sales pitch. "What kind of car are you looking for?" he asked, his voice losing its previous sharp edge, replaced by curiosity and a touch of impatience. But the man didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked around a specific car, examining it from every angle. It was one of the most expensive ones, a machine that few could afford. But it was clear the man wasn't there to admire the cars. He was there with a purpose. The manager's irritation began to grow. "I don't have all day. Are you going to make a decision, or should I show you to our more budget-friendly models?" His tone was becoming more biting now, a reflection of his discomfort with the situation. The man finally looked up, his face calm, but with a subtle intensity in his eyes. "I'm interested in buying that car," he said, pointing to the one he had been studying. The manager raised an eyebrow, incredulous. You? You want to buy that car?" He couldn't hide the disbelief. "That's one of our top models. It's not something you just walk in and buy on a whim." The words slipped out before he could stop them. He had already decided in his mind that the man didn't belong there. But instead of backing down, the man met the manager's eyes and said, "I'll take it. Just let me know the details." The manager's stomach dropped. Something didn't sit right. Maybe it was the man's calmness, or the quiet way he carried himself. He didn't look like someone who could afford the car, not like the typical customer. Maybe this was a prank. He shook his head, not fully ready to process what was happening. "Sir, we may have to run some checks. I can't let you test drive it just yet," the manager said, already planning to go through the motions of kicking the man out gently. But the man didn't wait. He took out his wallet, pulled out a credit card, and slid it across the counter. "Just run the transaction," he said, his voice steady. The manager froze, staring at the card. It was a business card, a high-end card from a prestigious bank. Something felt wrong. This didn't align with what he thought of the man, with the way he looked and carried himself. He took the card reluctantly, swiping it in the system. The tension in the air thickened. But then something strange happened. The system returned an approval notification. The manager couldn't believe his eyes. It didn't make sense. He checked it again. And again. The transaction was approved. The man was good for the car. But the manager wasn't ready to accept this. The manager, still stunned, tried to mask his surprise. "I'll just need to confirm some paperwork," he said. But the man cut him off. "No need," the man said calmly. "I'm the new owner of this dealership." The words hung in the air, slowly sinking in. The manager's mind raced as he stared at the man, his brain unable to process what had just been said. New owner? What was this man talking about? Before the manager could speak, the man handed over an official-looking document. It was the transfer of ownership papers for the dealership, signed and sealed, with all the right legalities in place. The manager's hand shook slightly as he took the document from the man. The realization slowly dawned on him, like a cloud breaking apart in the morning sun. The man before him was no ordinary customer. He wasn't just any buyer. He was the new owner. The dealer's tone shifted in an instant. His previous smugness disappeared, replaced by a nervous energy. He had just treated the new owner as a nobody. And now, the tables were turning, and he was the one in a position of uncertainty. The man, the new owner, smiled. "I think it's time for a change around here, don't you?" he said. The manager's face flushed with embarrassment, a deep sense of regret filling his chest. He had no idea that the man he had dismissed so casually was about to take control of everything. And now, as the manager stood there, he realized that this wasn't just about a car sale. It was about power, respect, and the bitter lessons learned too late. The realization hit the manager like a ton of bricks. His legs wobbled slightly as he stood there, still holding the ownership papers in his hands. He had been too quick to judge, too eager to dismiss the man who now stood before him. His arrogance, his assumption that he knew exactly who belonged in his dealership, had led him to a fatal mistake. He had thought of himself as untouchable, the one in control, but now everything had changed. The new owner stood there, calm and collected, watching the manager with an unreadable expression. There was no malice in his eyes, no sense of triumph, just a steady, almost serene focus. The man was not gloating. He wasn't acting like someone who had just pulled off a great stunt. He was simply waiting. Waiting for the manager to process everything. The manager's mind was racing. I don't understand," he stammered, his words shaky. How could you be the owner? I mean, I've been running this place for years. It doesn't make sense. There's no way you could just take over like this." The new owner smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reassured anyone. It was a smile of quiet understanding. He took a step forward, still as composed as ever, and placed a hand gently on the counter. "Sometimes, things aren't what they seem," he said, his voice measured, not harsh, but firm. "I'm not here to destroy your life. I'm here to make a change, to bring something fresh to this place." The manager felt a knot form in his stomach. His mind kept replaying the moment when he had been so dismissive, so certain that the man didn't belong. He had been rude, condescending, and arrogant. And now, it seemed like that very arrogance had cost him everything. How could he have been so blind? How could he have not recognized the opportunity right in front of him? "I'm sorry," the manager said, the words barely escaping his lips. He wanted to take them back as soon as they left his mouth, but they hung in the air like a heavy weight. He wasn't sure whether he was apologizing for underestimating the man or for something deeper, something more personal. Perhaps he was apologizing for the way he had treated people like the man, people he saw as beneath him. The realization stung. The new owner didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to the nearest car, a luxury sedan that had been sitting on the floor for months, waiting for the right buyer. The car was beautiful, sleek, and expensive. But it had been ignored, its value hidden beneath the dealer's careless neglect. The owner ran his fingers along the side of the car, taking in its details. "This place," he began, his voice carrying a weight of experience, "has potential. But it's been running on old systems, old ideas. It's stagnant. It needs a fresh perspective, someone who can see beyond the surface. Someone who understands that people aren't just customers. They're individuals. The manager stood frozen, not sure how to respond. The words hit him harder than any criticism had. He had always prided himself on knowing the business, on running things efficiently, but now he realized how little he truly understood. He had thought that treating customers like numbers, pushing them toward the highest-priced cars, was the way to succeed. He had dismissed people based on appearances, based on assumptions. And now, here he was, facing the consequences of his narrow view. The new owner turned to him then, his eyes locking onto the manager's. "I didn't come here to destroy what you've built," he said, his tone steady. "But I do want to change it. I want to remind people that this isn't just about selling cars. It's about building relationships. It's about trust. And if you're willing to adapt, we can make this place a success. But if not, well, there's always a better way to run a business." The manager could feel the weight of the words sinking into his chest. He was stuck, caught between the pride of his years of experience and the harsh truth that was now being laid out in front of him. The reality was that he had been part of the problem, not part of the solution. His practices, his attitudes, had led him down a path where the dealership was more about status than service, more about profit than people. For the first time in a long time, the manager felt a sense of humility. It was an unfamiliar feeling, one he hadn't experienced in years, not since the early days of his career when he had struggled to make a name for himself. The cockiness, the arrogance, the belief that he was invincible, he realized now it had all been a mask, a way to cover up the insecurities and fears that had been lurking beneath the surface. He looked at the man before him, the one who had just purchased the dealership without hesitation, and felt something he hadn't expected: respect. "I was wrong," the manager said, the words coming more easily now, though still heavy with regret. "I didn't see it. I didn't understand what this place could be. But I'm willing to learn, to change. I can see now, there's more to this than just the cars." The new owner nodded. "I'm glad you understand," he said quietly. "Change isn't easy, but it's necessary. And I'm here to help guide that change. But you need to be open to it. You can't hold on to the past if you want to build a future." The manager took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of relief. The weight of the moment had not passed, but for the first time, he felt like he could see a way forward. Perhaps, in the end, this wasn't just a loss. It was a chance to become something more. A chance to rebuild, not just the dealership, but himself as well. The next few days at the dealership felt surreal for the manager. The new owner, whose presence still echoed in the showroom, had completely shifted the atmosphere. No longer was the dealership a place where people were merely customers, subjected to sales tactics and high-pressure negotiations. Instead, the new owner had begun laying out a plan, a vision, for a transformation. It wasn't just about improving the numbers, it was about improving the experience for everyone involved. The manager had been given a new role, one he hadn't expected. He was no longer in charge of the day-to-day operations, but he was still asked to stay on, to assist with the transition. At first, he had been hesitant, unsure how to contribute after all the years of running the dealership with his own methods. But as the days passed, he began to see the wisdom in the changes the new owner was implementing. One of the first things the new owner had done was restructure the sales approach. He had brought in a consultant, a woman who was well known in the industry for her work with customer relations. She wasn't here to teach them how to sell more cars, she was here to teach them how to connect with people. The manager watched as she interacted with customers in a completely different way. She didn't push for a sale, she asked questions, took the time to understand their needs, and then helped them find the car that was truly right for them, not just the one that would bring in the biggest commission. At first, the staff had been skeptical. Change was always met with resistance, especially when it came to the way things had always been done. The salespeople, many of whom had been at the dealership for years, felt threatened by the new approach. They weren't used to the idea of treating customers like human beings with real emotions and needs. To them, the job had always been about the numbers: close the deal, get the commission, and move on to the next one. But the new owner's vision was clear. People buy cars, not because they need them, but because they want them, he had said during the staff meeting on the second day. And what they really want is to feel heard, understood, and respected. We're not in the business of pushing cars, we're in the business of building trust. And once we have that, the sales will come. The manager watched this all unfold with a sense of awe. He had spent so many years seeing things through a very narrow lens, thinking that pushing the highest-priced cars was the way to success. But now he was starting to realize that he had been mistaken. The old methods hadn't built any real loyalty. Sure, the dealership had made money, but how many of those customers had returned? How many had shared their experience with others? How many had felt like they had made an informed decision, not just a quick purchase? It wasn't just about the sales anymore. The new owner had made it clear that the success of the business depended on long-term relationships, not one-time transactions. He had called in all the regular customers who hadn't been back in months or even years, offering them personalized services and inviting them to return. Slowly but surely, the old faces were beginning to appear again. They came in for a chat, to see what had changed, to check out the new atmosphere. The manager had noticed something else. The new owner had not only focused on the customers, but also on the employees. He had sat down with each member of the team, asking them about their goals, their ideas, and their struggles. He wasn't just their boss now, he was a mentor, someone who genuinely wanted to see them grow. The manager had never seen this level of care before. He had always assumed that the job was just about managing people, making sure the work got done. But now, he realized, leadership was about fostering growth, both in the business and in the people who worked there. It wasn't long before the first signs of change became apparent. The dealership started to attract a different kind of customer. The people who walked through the door weren't just looking to buy a car. They were looking for a place where they could trust the staff, a place where they could feel like they were more than just a sale. And, in return, the dealership's reputation began to improve. Word of mouth spread, and more people started coming in, not just to look at the cars, but to see for themselves what the new owner had built. The manager found himself slowly warming to the changes. He had always been so focused on the business side of things, the numbers, the deals, that he hadn't noticed how much he had been missing. But now, with each customer interaction, with each employee meeting, he started to see the bigger picture. It wasn't just about making money anymore. It was about building a community, a brand that people trusted, and an environment where employees felt supported and valued. One day, as the manager was walking through the lot, he overheard a conversation between two of the salespeople. They were talking about the new approach, and for the first time, the tone in their voices was different, less dismissive, less resistant. They were starting to understand what the new owner had been saying all along. They were starting to see the value in connecting with customers, in taking the time to listen and understand their needs. "I think I get it now," one of them said. "It's not about closing the deal on the spot. It's about making sure they leave happy, knowing they made the right choice. And if we do that, they'll come back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually." The manager smiled to himself as he listened. The seeds of change were being planted. And while it would take time for the dealership to fully transform, there was no doubt in his mind that the shift was happening. And it wasn't just the dealership that was changing, it was him too. For the first time in years, the manager felt like he was part of something bigger, something meaningful. He wasn't just going through the motions anymore. He was learning, growing, and becoming part of a vision that had the potential to change everything. He had been given a second chance, and this time, he wasn't going to let it slip away. The dealership had undergone an impressive transformation in just a few weeks. The air felt different, charged with a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. Every day, the manager watched as the new owner continued to reshape the way things were done, but this time, something was different. The manager wasn't just observing from the sidelines, he was slowly becoming an active participant in the change. Each day, the weight of his past mistakes seemed a little lighter, and the guilt of his earlier behavior seemed to fade. What had once felt like a burden was now a catalyst for his personal growth. One afternoon, as the dealership buzzed with customers, the manager found himself standing by the coffee machine, absent-mindedly stirring his cup. It had become a routine moment of reflection, a brief pause before the chaos of the day swept him back into the grind. As he sipped his coffee, he couldn't help but think about how far the dealership had come in such a short time. The salespeople, who had once resisted the new approach, were now thriving in it. They had started to appreciate the importance of building trust with customers rather than simply pushing a sale. One salesperson, who had always been the top earner, was now leading the team in a completely different way. She no longer treated every interaction as a transaction. Instead, she took the time to learn about her customers, to listen to their needs, and to guide them toward the best possible decision. The shift had been subtle, but it was undeniable. Customers were returning, and word was spreading fast. And then there was the new owner. Every time the manager thought he had the man figured out, something else would surprise him. He was still the same calm, collected figure who had walked into the dealership months ago, but now he carried himself with a quiet authority that was both reassuring and intimidating. The manager had been prepared for someone who might be a little overbearing, someone who would demand immediate results and push the staff hard. But that wasn't what he saw. Instead, the new owner led by example. He didn't give orders, he gave guidance. He didn't demand loyalty, he earned it. One day, as the manager sat in his office, reviewing some of the dealership's performance reports, the door creaked open. He looked up to find the new owner standing in the doorway, a subtle smile on his face. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" the new owner asked, stepping inside without waiting for a response. The manager, slightly taken aback by the unexpected visit, motioned for him to sit. "Of course. What's on your mind?" The new owner settled into the chair across from him, his demeanor relaxed, but there was a hint of something in his eyes that suggested he had something important to discuss. "I've been thinking about the next step," the new owner said, his voice steady and deliberate. "The changes we've made so far have been a good start, but we can't stop here. We need to take it to the next level." The manager, intrigued, leaned forward. "What do you have in mind?" The new owner's gaze was intense, but there was a quiet wisdom behind it that made the manager hang on every word. "We need to expand our reach," the new owner said. "Right now, we're doing well with the customers we've built relationships with, but we need to go beyond that. We need to start looking at other communities, reaching people who haven't even considered coming here. We need to make this place more than just a dealership. We need to make it a part of the community." The manager thought for a moment. "So, you're talking about advertising, promotions, that sort of thing?" The new owner shook his head, a slight smile on his lips. "No, it's more than that. It's about being present. It's about giving back. We need to be seen as more than just a business trying to make money. We need to be a resource for people, a place where they can come for advice, for support, for a sense of belonging." The manager's mind raced as he processed the idea. It was bold, unconventional even, but it made sense. The dealership had always been a place where transactions were the focus. But what if they could build something bigger? What if they could create a community of people who felt connected to the dealership, not just because they bought cars, but because they felt valued? "What are you suggesting?" the manager asked. "I want to start hosting events," the new owner said. "Not just sales events, but events that bring people together. We can host community gatherings, car clinics where people can learn about maintenance, charity drives, local art shows, anything that gets people through the door, even if they don't need a car. And when they see the value we bring to the community, they'll remember us when they do need one." The idea was revolutionary. The manager had never considered such a personal, community-focused approach. He had always thought about business in terms of transactions, the bottom line, and the next sale. But this was different. This was about creating something lasting, something that went beyond the usual sales pitch. "I think it's a great idea," the manager said, feeling a spark of excitement in his chest. "But how do we get started?" The new owner smiled again, this time with a bit of pride in his eyes. "We'll start small. Let's organize a local car show, invite our customers, their friends, and family. We'll partner with local businesses, maybe even bring in food trucks, music, something to make it fun. The goal isn't to sell cars that day, it's to build relationships, to show people that we're here for the long haul. As the manager sat back in his chair, he felt something shift inside him. The idea was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of change that had been missing for so long. The dealership was no longer just a place to buy cars. It was becoming a cornerstone of the community, a place where people could gather, learn, and connect. The manager felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just going through the motions. He was part of something bigger. The dealership was changing, but so was he. He had learned the hard way that success wasn't just about pushing for the sale, it was about building trust, forming relationships, and giving back. The new owner had shown him a different way, and now it was up to him to make it happen. The day of the first community event arrived, and the atmosphere at the dealership was nothing short of electric. There was a new energy in the air, an undercurrent of excitement that hadn't been felt in years. Staff members, who had once only focused on making a sale, were now buzzing with enthusiasm, discussing how to best interact with the visitors, how to make everyone feel welcome. The new owner's idea of hosting a community car show had completely transformed the dealership from a place of business to a vibrant gathering spot. The manager, who had been initially unsure of how this event would unfold, now found himself caught up in the excitement. For the first time in his career, he wasn't worried about quotas or monthly sales targets. Instead, he was focused on something much more meaningful, building connections. He could see it clearly now. This wasn't just about showcasing cars, it was about creating lasting relationships with people who would feel like they belonged here, people who would choose this dealership not just for the cars, but for the sense of community that had been built. The event kicked off at noon, with the parking lot already starting to fill up with cars. Local vendors set up food trucks, and the hum of chatter filled the air. Families were arriving, children running around with balloons, and groups of friends taking in the array of cars lined up for display. The dealership had never seen such a crowd before. The manager found himself walking around, greeting people, watching as the staff, now re-energized by the event, engaged with the visitors in ways they never had before. The atmosphere was laid back, fun, and full of warmth. But the real surprise came when people started talking. The new owner had made it clear that this event wasn't about making a sale, but about showing up for the community. People were talking about the dealership not because they were interested in buying cars, but because they were amazed at the change. They saw a dealership that wasn't just trying to make money, but one that was genuinely trying to make a positive impact. They saw a business that cared about more than just numbers, they saw a place that cared about people. By mid-afternoon, the manager was standing by one of the cars, listening as a young couple discussed the options available. The conversation was pleasant, not rushed. The sales team had stopped pushing hard for the sale and instead was focused on explaining the features of the cars, offering advice, and answering questions. It was a refreshing change for everyone involved. As he walked over to the food trucks, the manager couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just a successful event in terms of numbers, it was a success in every way that mattered. People were enjoying themselves, laughing, and chatting with the staff. It felt like a neighborhood gathering rather than a business transaction. At that moment, the new owner approached him, a subtle smile playing at the corners of his lips. The manager could see that the man was content. There was no rush to leave, no concern about the sales. The new owner was simply soaking in the success of the event. "Looks like it's going better than we hoped," the new owner said, his tone calm but satisfied. The manager, who had been lost in the joy of the day, looked around and nodded. "I have to admit, I didn't see it coming. This isn't just about selling cars. It's about connecting with people. And it feels good. Really good." The new owner's smile widened. "It's always been about connection. This isn't a one-time thing either. We're in this for the long haul. If we keep showing up for people, building trust, and making them feel at home, we'll see the results. Not just in sales, but in loyalty. That's what matters. The manager's thoughts raced as he reflected on the changes that had taken place. When the new owner had first taken over, the manager had struggled with the shift. It was difficult for him to let go of the old ways, to stop chasing numbers and start focusing on people. But standing there in the midst of the event, surrounded by happy customers and engaged employees, he felt something click. The manager wasn't just a spectator anymore, he was part of something real, something genuine. As the day wore on, the crowd continued to grow. People were exchanging stories, talking about their lives, their families, and their dreams. It was as if the dealership had become a part of something bigger than just a car lot. It had become a place where people gathered, a space where relationships were built and strengthened. By the time the event came to a close, the manager found himself standing near the exit, shaking hands with the last few visitors. He could tell that many of them were already planning to come back. The success of the day wasn't measured in the number of cars sold or the deals made, it was measured in the connections that had been formed. As the last customer left, the new owner joined him by the door, both of them looking at the nearly empty parking lot. The manager couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. He had seen firsthand the power of community, the power of people coming together for something more than just business. "You did it," the manager said, turning to the new owner, his voice full of admiration. The new owner shrugged, a humble smile crossing his face. "We did it. This is just the beginning. We've built something special today. But we're not stopping here. The real work starts tomorrow." The manager nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He had spent years managing a dealership that focused solely on sales, but now he was part of a place that prioritized people. It wasn't just about cars anymore, it was about building a community. And for the first time in a long time, the manager felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The dealership had become a beacon in the community, a place where people weren't just customers, but valued members of a growing family. The once sterile showroom now had an inviting warmth to it. Employees weren't just pushing products, they were building lasting relationships, engaging with people on a deeper level. Word had spread about the change, and the dealership was attracting customers who hadn't considered stepping foot inside before. The transformation was undeniable, and it was all thanks to the new owner's vision. As the weeks passed, the manager found himself fully immersed in the evolution of the dealership. He had learned so much about customer relationships, leadership, and even himself. He was no longer focused solely on numbers and sales targets. Instead, he was thinking about long-term growth, about creating an environment where people felt respected, heard, and valued. It wasn't just about pushing the latest model, it was about understanding what people truly needed, what they truly wanted. The manager had become something more than just an employee, he had become a leader. He started to mentor the newer salespeople, guiding them through the process of building rapport with customers, teaching them the importance of listening, and explaining that sometimes a sale wasn't about convincing someone to buy, it was about helping them make the right decision. The old way of hard selling had faded into the past, replaced by a more compassionate, consultative approach. The manager found a deep sense of satisfaction in this role, not because it was easy, but because it felt right. For the first time in his career, he felt like he was making a real difference. One afternoon, as the dealership began to quiet down after a busy day, the new owner approached him. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, and the manager couldn't help but wonder what was next. The changes had already been so monumental, what more could be done? The new owner, with his usual calm demeanor, looked at the manager and smiled. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "You've done a great job with the team. You've embraced the changes, and I can see the shift in both you and the dealership. But there's still more we can do. We're not just a car dealership anymore, we're a resource for this community. And I think it's time we took that to the next level." The manager raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean by next level?" The new owner leaned in slightly, his eyes focused. "I think it's time to create a program that not only helps people buy cars, but also helps them after the sale. We need to think about maintenance, customer support, and education. We should offer workshops, help them learn about car care, financial advice for auto loans, and more. Let's create an experience for people that extends beyond the showroom floor. The manager sat back in his chair, digesting the idea. It was an ambitious plan, but it felt right. The dealership had already begun to build trust with its customers, and this new initiative could solidify the bond even further. It wasn't just about selling cars, it was about becoming an integral part of people's lives, offering them value beyond the transaction. I like it, the manager said after a moment of thought. It's not just a car dealership anymore. It's a service hub, a place where people can come for more than just a product. It's about creating a relationship that lasts well after they drive off the lot. The new owner nodded. Exactly. We're not just here to sell cars, we're here to build trust. And by offering these services, we show that we care about their experience long term. Over the next few weeks, the new program began to take shape. The manager worked closely with the new owner to develop workshops on car maintenance, budgeting for a car loan, and even basic driving skills for new drivers. They also started offering complimentary consultations on the best ways to manage a car purchase financially. The dealership wasn't just providing cars, it was becoming a resource center for the community, helping people make informed decisions that would improve their lives. The program launched with much fanfare, drawing in even more customers who were curious about the value the dealership could offer. The first workshop was a resounding success, with local residents filling the dealership to learn about car care and finance management. The manager watched, proud of what they had created. It wasn't just a sales event, it was an educational experience, and people appreciated it. They felt empowered to make better decisions, not just as consumers, but as members of a community that cared for them. As the program gained traction, the manager saw the impact it was having on the team. The staff was more engaged, more motivated, because they knew they weren't just pushing products, they were helping people. There was a sense of fulfillment in the work they did. The old pressure to meet monthly sales targets had been replaced with a deeper sense of purpose, to ensure that every customer felt heard, respected, and well taken care of. But the manager also realized something else. It wasn't just the dealership that had changed. He had changed. When he had first met the new owner, he had been skeptical. He had been focused on his own methods and ways of doing things, resistant to anything that felt unfamiliar. But now, as he looked at the thriving dealership, he understood. The new owner had taught him something valuable. Success didn't come from pushing harder or being more aggressive. It came from being present, being compassionate, and focusing on long-term relationships instead of short-term gains. For the first time in his career, the manager felt truly proud of the work he was doing. Not because it was easy or because it was rewarding in the traditional sense, but because it was meaningful. He had become part of a movement, a shift in how business could be done, a shift in how people could be treated. The dealership wasn't just selling cars anymore, it was building a community, and the manager was proud to be a part of it. The dealership had transformed beyond recognition. The shiny cars on the showroom floor no longer stood as symbols of opulence and luxury alone. They were part of a much bigger picture, one that had moved from mere transactions to lasting relationships. The once cold, transactional atmosphere had given way to an inviting space where people felt welcome, heard, and respected. It wasn't just about the cars anymore, it was about the lives those cars touched, and the stories people shared with the dealership team. The manager had found a new purpose. Every day he walked into the dealership, he felt a sense of pride that went beyond the typical managerial accomplishments. It wasn't the sales figures that fueled him, it was the difference he saw in the customers' lives. He was no longer just overseeing operations, he was contributing to something much greater. It was an early morning when the new owner walked into the manager's office, a slight smile on his face. The manager looked up from his desk, feeling a mix of curiosity and anticipation. It had been months since the new owner's first day, and the progress they had made together was far beyond what either of them had imagined. They had redefined what it meant to be a car dealership, creating a business that wasn't just a place to buy cars, but a community hub. "Everything's looking great," the new owner said, taking a seat across from the manager. "The community engagement, the customer retention, the workshops, we've built something really special here." The manager nodded. "It's been incredible, hasn't it? I never imagined we could make such an impact, but it's been worth every bit of effort. The customers are happier, and the staff is more motivated than ever." The new owner leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "I'm glad to hear that. But there's something more I need to talk to you about." The manager's curiosity piqued. "What's that?" "You've done an outstanding job. I don't think I could have asked for anyone better to help lead this transformation," the new owner began, his voice steady but warm. "And because of that, I want to offer you something more, something bigger. I think you're ready to take on even more responsibility here. The dealership has grown, and we need someone who understands the heart of the business, someone who embodies the vision we've built." The manager's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't entirely sure where this conversation was headed, but he had a feeling it would change everything. "I'm offering you the position of general manager," the new owner continued. "Not just overseeing operations, but leading this entire business. The changes we've made need someone who can maintain the spirit we've created and take it even further. You're the one who understands how to keep this place rooted in what matters most." For a moment, the manager was speechless. The weight of the words hung in the air, and a sense of disbelief settled over him. When the new owner had first walked into the dealership, he had been skeptical, unsure of the changes ahead. He had never imagined that he would be asked to take on such a significant role. But here he was, being entrusted with something far more valuable than a paycheck, a responsibility to continue the work they had started and lead it into the future. I don't know what to say," the manager stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never imagined this for myself. It's overwhelming, but in the best way." The new owner smiled, understanding the gravity of the moment. "You've earned it. More than that, you've proven that you're committed to the vision we've built. You've shown that it's not just about the cars, it's about the people, about making a real impact in this community. You've been an incredible partner in this transformation." The manager stood up from his desk, his mind racing. The sense of fulfillment he had found in these past months had been beyond anything he had experienced before. The challenges had been real, but they had also brought out the best in him. He had not only embraced the change, but had become a leader in it. And now, as the new general manager, he would have the opportunity to shape the future of the dealership, ensuring that the community-driven vision they had built would continue to thrive. "I'll do everything I can to keep this going, to keep making this place a better space for people," the manager said, his voice steady with newfound confidence. "I promise you, I won't let you down." The new owner gave a slight nod, clearly pleased with the manager's response. "I know you won't. I'm looking forward to what's next. We've only scratched the surface of what we can do." As the manager sat back down, a sense of calm washed over him. The dealership had become something he could be proud of. It wasn't just about the work anymore, it was about the mission, the vision, and the community they were serving. He had come a long way since the early days of skepticism and doubt, and he had learned some valuable lessons along the way. The most important one being that success wasn't measured in numbers, but in the relationships that were built. The manager looked out the window, watching as the sun began to rise over the dealership's parking lot. The day was just beginning, and he could already sense that the next chapter of their journey was about to unfold. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but with the foundation they had laid, he was confident they could face any challenge that came their way. The dealership was no longer just a place to buy cars, it was a place that had changed lives. And now, as the general manager, the manager was ready to take on the responsibility of ensuring it would continue to do so.